Hey, read through the word. Today is October 17th, and today's lesson is called 7 Signs. We're in the book of John again. Okay, where to start? Let's start with our verses. Now, in my notes, and originally I have this John 9, 8 through 11. We're going to back up one more verse into 7. Because I want us to start this because I talk about it. It says, he told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. Excuse me. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. Now, his neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man that used to sit and beg? Some said he was, and others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. But they asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them, the man they call Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see. And I also love further along, they try to get, at this point you've got the Pharisees are hard after Jesus to build a case against him. And so they're trying to trip up people. So they talk to the guy's parents and they talk to him, and he's like, who is this? And he says in verse 25, verse 24, it says, so for the second time they called in the man who had been blind and said to him, God should get the glory for this, because we know this man named Jesus is a sinner. And he says back, I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind and now I can see. I love that. I don't know. All I know is I was blind and now I see. Because he's like, I'm not getting involved in all this either. Okay. So much to talk about. Now, the reason the lesson is called 7 Signs is we are in the book of John. And John wrote his gospel decades after the other 3. Mark is believed to have been the first gospel written. Now, he uses a lot of, and I've told you before that John has built a orderly account. All different, like Luke has an eyewitness testimony. John is proving, now if you'll go back probably a year ago, around this time, I have the discussion with what John's doing with his audience. What he's placed before them a decision throughout. Believe or not. Do you believe? And so he is, this is the latest written gospel, and it contains mostly new material. Matthew and Luke has a lot of extra eyewitness, but they both borrow heavily from Mark. But John is full of symbolism. I talked to you the other day about when we talked about bread of life, about the I am statements. And so you have all those lovely metaphors that are there. And John is concerned with accurately and precisely describing who Jesus Christ is. I mean, the very first verses he's trying to make the connection with is when he says, in the beginning, it's supposed to go, Genesis, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. But as we see that, John explains to us, I learned my lesson, I brought another Bible in. This is my Bible from high school. A friend of mine gave it to me when we graduated high school. was my student Bible NIV. I probably never opened the thing. Just being honest. John 20, verses 30 through 31. It says this. Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. For these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So we talked about, and I've talked about this, that's why I told you to go back and reference before, that I gave you the organization of John, and I might do it again. But as far as John brings forth 7 witnesses that will reveal who God is. That Jesus is God. And you have the 7 I am statements. And now the 7 signs or the 7 miracles that John records as he is building his argument for you, the reader, to make a decision. These are written that you may believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and by believing, you have life in his name. And so each of the 7 miracles contributed to John's purpose of establishing and aiding faith. Why 7? Now, it's because John is keeping the symbolism of 7 going on throughout his book. And we will see it continue in the book of Revelation. But I want you to note this. The last verse in the book of John says, this is John 21:25. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. God has given us what we need to know to decide. And that's what John does, is John gives us the miraculous signs that Jesus is who he says he is, that he is who he's claimed to be. So the first one is, the first miracle in the 7 is water to wine, which I've put all these in your notes, which is in John chapter 2. The second is the healing of the official son, which is in John chapter 4. The next is the healing at the pool, John chapter 5. The next is the feeding of the 5,000 in John chapter 6. The first part of John chapter 6. The next part of John chapter 6 records Jesus walking on water. John chapter 9, which is where we are right now, is healing the blind man. And then the 7th miracle is the resurrection of Lazarus. So this whole account in John 9 is very interesting in so many ways about what Jesus is doing, what he's saying to the Pharisees, what the people are claiming about him, and of the interaction with the Pharisees. Because the Pharisees have in their mind is they're trying to set up their case that Jesus is going to die. They're just trying to figure out how to get rid of him. And what we see is a blind man who could see who Jesus was. But we see the Pharisees could see, but they couldn't see Jesus. And Jesus even comments on that. And also that John will continually see this in the book of John as he's building this with his 7s, is that Jesus was sent by God. That's why he starts with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then he says, and then he talks about the coming of John the Baptist, and then he talks about Jesus being sent, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. That this whole idea of sent is all throughout his gospel, that Jesus is from heaven. He was sent here. He is God. He has done this. You decide, do you believe? And It is by no mistake that this miracle is at the pool called sent. That's why the gospel tells us this word means sent. Jesus was sent here. So that Jesus says over and over, and John including in that he was sent by God. So you have so much going on in this of 7 miracles, 7 signs. You have one right here that there is so much in here to discuss of what the man realized, the blind man who can now see but could see who Jesus was, the Pharisees who were blind to everything and could not see who Jesus was right before them because they refused to see. So he even says that to them. The idea that the one that was blind and healed, that he and his parents both know something's up with the Pharisees and will not reveal things to them because they know, I don't know, I was blind and now I can see. I'm going to tell you anything about this man because I just was able to see, but I can see that you are up to no good. So he's not going to tell them. And then, but this sign, this miracle fits John's purpose in his gospel of what he is. And I've told you before, he's trying to leave it till we get to that very last verse, spoiler, in the book, where he says, okay, I just told you just a little bit. I gave you some sermons. I gave you signs. I gave you witnesses. I gave you I am statements. And you know what? Jesus did so much more that if all of it was written down, the world could not contain all the books that would be written. I tell my students that all the time. Imagine what he did that we don't know about. And that if we've just been given this little bit, man, and we're trusting our eternal salvation, we should be digging in deep. We should want to know everything. And see, here's the last thing with this. After he's healed, Jesus sends the man on a mission. And you know what? He does the same for us today. By his wounds, we are healed. And he has sent us on a mission. May he find me faithful. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.